So I appreciate that Mary and Martha are sitting next to each other on the back row. I think one year we had you all do a skit, didn't we? Didn't we have you do a Mary and Martha skit? No,
I'll be in the kitchen.
maybe I dreamt that. Maybe that's next year. We'll see. So good morning.
Good morning.
We are in the 5th week of our series, Intentional Living, a Benedictine Path. I mean, every Sunday we've explored one habit that brings purpose into our ordinary days. So we began with attention, the discipline of showing up in full awareness of God and neighbor. Week 2, we examined time and how a considered schedule can hold our deepest commitments. Week 3, we turned to hospitality, the practice of creating space for the presence of others. And then last week, we heard testimony on service, illuminated by the story of the Good Samaritan, where compassion moved from thought to action. And today, we address a force that undermines all 4 habits: distraction. So the gospel, it starts with Jesus at the home of Martha and Mary. Martha welcomes him, and Mary seats herself near him and starts to listen. Martha is busy doing all of the things. And I always thought about this story as Mary is spending time with Jesus, and Martha, who's too busy working to spend time with Jesus. And of course, Mary had chosen the right thing. But that isn't actually the story, as I was reading it this week. The story is that Mary is sitting at the feet of Jesus, and Martha is doing all the things and getting very flustered and frustrated. She asks Jesus to scold Mary, and Jesus replies, "You're worried and distracted by many things, and only one thing is needed." The rebuke is directed at distraction, not at the work she's doing. Martha's tasks, they're legitimate. The problem that we see here is the divided attention that drains her peace and her sense of purpose. Mary, by contrast, is centered and alert. So picture the scene from Pixar's Up, right? You remember this movie. Carl and Russell, they've just met Doug. Doug is this dog whose collar gives voice to his thoughts. And Doug begins this friendly, earnest introduction. And then there's a rustle in the bushes, and it steals his gaze. Mid-sentence, he jerks his head and he shouts, "Squirrel!" and forgets everything he was saying. And the moment lasts a second, but the conversation, it's gone. And we laugh because it's really familiar, right? A phone vibrates, an email shows up, or all of a sudden we have this worry of a deadline that we have tomorrow that comes across our head. And whatever we were doing, whatever conversation we were in, it just snaps away that quick. Like Doug, we're present one moment and mentally elsewhere in the next, leaving words half-spoken and relationships waiting. So the rule of Benedict begins with a single verb, listen. And we've talked about this before. Everything in the day, prayer, manual labor, study, rest, it exists to protect that listening. A bell calls the community to prayer. Another bell sends the members to their work. And the pattern is simple: attend, act, return, and reflect. The structure is designed to quiet the fragmentation and to cultivate the steady awareness of God. When Benedict draws that pattern, he's not constructing some escape from the world. Rather, he is really building this framework that allows this presence to be within it. So distraction certainly is not a new challenge, but it does feel like in our time, it's really amplified. Devices do interrupt all of our conversations. News feeds break concentration, and we have these mental loops that are going in our head of whatever our anxiety is for that day. And we are conditioned to treat these interruptions as just normal and background noise, but they actually do erode our capacity to notice. They erode our ability to think clearly and to respond with kindness. They also prod us into resentment. Martha's complaint, "Do you not care?" is familiar language when we feel unseen or overextended. So to confront distraction, Benedict invites a daily scrutiny of the heart. Adapting that practice to our context, what I want us to do this week is to set aside 3 minutes at the day's end. Walk back through the day like a quiet witness. This is sort of a modified examine. Identify one moment when distraction interrupted genuine presence. Note what triggered it and offer that moment to God, acknowledging it without judgment. And this simple review, it serves two purposes. First, it trains honesty about how we spend our attention. And second, it sparks a desire for change, rooted in freedom and not guilt. Growth tends to follow clarity. So we have to know where we have the distractions before we can move away from them. And I think a second practice that provides some structure to the day is to choose one fixed pause, perhaps at noon or right after a key meeting. So this is a continuation of a practice of pause that we've talked about a couple of times. And I think the great thing about having a longer series is that it allows us to keep circling back to things that we've talked about and practices that was like, oh yeah, I remember that. I was doing that pause and I'm not doing it. And it gives us a chance, like Benedict always says, always begin again. So we begin again. We find this one place. We silence our notifications. We set down our tools. We breathe slowly and hold a single sentence of scripture in mind. And if you don't have like that scripture that you just love or that you want to use, you can use the phrase, God, you are here. I am here too. So I've been using this phrase a lot lately. It grounds me in knowing that I am in the presence of God. It also acknowledges that I am showing up. I've loved it. So use it and see if you like it as much as I do. God, you are here. I am here too. And 1 minute is enough. The interruption of noise with silence is itself a counter formation. It reminds the body and the mind that presence is possible, and then the day resumes with renewed focus. When tasks demand service, name that task aloud. So, for example, when preparing a meal, say, this meal is an act of welcome, or this meal is to show people I love them. Speaking the intention can actually stop that drift towards resentment. It locates our work within purpose and turns service into embodied prayer. This is the transformation that Martha needs, right? Her work itself, it's not a burden when anchored in awareness of Christ's presence. And these steps, they're really modest. They don't require retreat from obligations, but they do invite us to move through obligations with undivided attention. Attention sharpens, and time feels less fragmented. Hospitality can regain its genuine warmth, and service can break free of grievance. So picture an ordinary day guided by these practices. Morning begins with a brief acknowledgement of God before any screen lights up. Breakfast is shared without headlines or alerts. Work unfolds one task at a time, each introduced by intention. At midday, there's a short pause that resets focus, and later interruptions become opportunities for hospitality rather than irritants. And then evening arrives. 3 minutes review gathers moments of presence and moments of distractions alike and places them in God's hands. Sleep follows, unburdened by the false urgency of unread notifications. Sounds great. Mary and Martha offer a living example of this possibility. Mary listens with full awareness, and Martha learns, if she chooses, to serve with equal presence, her work no longer fractured by worry. The story leaves Martha's response open, and in that gap, we hear our own invitation. Will we allow distraction to rule the hours, or will we choose the one thing needed, an undivided heart attentive to Christ in every moment? Intentional living is not an extra layer of obligation. It is actually the lighter path. Clarity replaces haste. Service flows from centeredness. Listening grounds action. May we accept Jesus' invitation to move from distraction to presence, from division to wholeness.